Okay.
Welcome everyone to the inaugural webinar and fall virtual program of the ACRL Digital Scholarship section. A huge thanks to our fairly newly formed Professional Development Committee for putting this program together so that everyone can be introduced to the wide leadership of our section, from the executive committee to our committee chairs and our discussion group conveners. My name is Chelsea Rowell, and I'm the secretary of the Digital Scholarship section. As of today, my title is Team Lead for Digital Scholarship at Tufts University. I literally just came from my new hire orientation. So my role in the formation of the section goes back to the three founding interest groups. The Digital Scholarship section formed from the Digital Curation interest group of ACRL, as well as the Numeric and Geospatial data interest group, and finally the Digital Humanities interest group. So I became a member of the executive committee of the newly formed Digital Scholarship section by virtue of being one of the incoming conveners of the Digital Humanities interest group. Why, you might ask, should we form the Digital Scholarship section within ACRL? One reason was purely logistical. Something that I learned through this process is that interest groups go through a process of determining their usefulness, and often member communities start as discussion groups. Anyone can launch a discussion group, and after a certain period of time, if that discussion group is still relevant, it might become an interest group. And similarly, interest groups, after a certain amount of time, have the option to form sections. And so the Digital Curation interest group was at that point in its life cycle where it needed to consider the next step. And they approached the Numeric and Geospatial data interest group, as well as the Digital Humanities interest group. And so we formed together, raised a proposal, and formed the Digital Scholarship section. I think the formation of this section within the structure of ACRL and ALA speaks to the kind of institutionalization of digital scholarship that is taking place within many of our institutions. I can speak only from my own experience, but many people began as the lone digital humanities librarian or the lone data services librarian, and now we find ourselves part of fully formed departments within our academic libraries and a more fully formed suite of services that we're providing to researchers, both faculty and students, on our campuses. And so in the same way that digital scholarship is being institutionalized within our campuses, it is also now being institutionalized within our professional organizations. So certainly within ALA and ACRL, we now have the Digital Scholarship section, but there are other groups as well, like the Digital Scholarship Working Group within the Digital Library Federation. So I think that the formation of this section is evidence of a broader trend of institutionalization. I'll close by talking briefly about the work of this section to date. I would say that we're still very much in a startup phase. For example, this webinar or virtual program itself is a test case for us to figure out what is the process of hosting it. And in fact, the Professional Development Committee is using this virtual program as an opportunity to document the steps for hosting future virtual programs. One of our earliest accomplishments as a section was hosting a pre-conference at this past ALA annual conference in New Orleans. The pre-conference that we hosted was called Deconstructing Digital Scholarship Consultations in the Library. And so its focus was not on any particular digital scholarship method or any particular genre of digital scholarship project, but rather kind of the soft skills of consulting with people who might come to you as an individual or the team of which you're a part and need some help shaping that idea. All of those conference materials are openly available online, and I think we'll send it to all of the attendees after this program. You may also have seen recently announcements on the Digital Scholarship Section email list, DSSL, that we sent a survey that was primarily put together by the Outreach Committee to understand what are the communication channels that you most want the section to use. And those results are in, and we are making a plan to respond to them. But also, excitingly, we put out a call for people to develop logos and then to vote on logos. And so you saw our brand new logo as of something like last Thursday on the title slide of this program. So that's a quick introduction to the section and what we've done so far. And I think with that, I will hand it over to Karen Hogenboom to move us forward with the rest of our program.
Do you want me to start, or Karen, do you have something to say? Okay, all right, I'm told that I'm up. Thank you for dialing in this morning. I'm Michelle Erberg. I work with Susanna Conrad for this group to lead the digital collections discussion group. And at this point, we're definitely working on forming our identity and figuring out what our niche is within this section. Both of us work with electronic collections. I'm actually a metadata librarian who works with the old Serial Solutions product at ProQuest. So I do a lot of monographic serial cataloging and things like that. But I do know we host a lot of digital collections elsewhere in ProQuest, and that's an important product for us. Susanna is, I do believe now she's the head of metadata at our institution in California. And she, in some ways, has more experience with dealing with digital collections in general, especially in an academic context. But we're both really excited to get our group off the ground. I have just a few things about our plans for this next year. We have just over 100 people on the listserv and are looking for more people to join. We did host an event at ALA last year about funding digital collections projects. And this year we are we are actually in the process of, we put out our call for papers to host an event at ALA Annual in Washington, D.C. And that's coming due fairly soon. We'll be sharing that again. But in addition to doing that kind of work, we're sort of trying to find our audience in a way. We're seeding the list with various questions about digital collections. So far, we haven't really found the sweet spot where we're getting a lot of traction with those. We will be meeting in person at Midwinter in Seattle. I live in Seattle, so I'll be there. And I think, I haven't heard a confirmation on this, but I think there will be an opportunity to dial into that event, but we're waiting from our section head to get the okay on that. It's technological things. It's not permission per se, just we need to have a microphone. And alongside of that, our next programming processes will involve hosting a couple of webinars. We're shooting for 2 to 4. So we're looking for information from other sections. I think we're toying with a collaboration with the Digital Humanities group and another group in RBMS for annual. But this is certainly something that could be modeled for a webinar, and topics are welcome. We are really hoping to just generate more interest in the list. That's by far the most challenging thing that we are facing at the moment. We want to be there to help you and to serve this community need. So yeah, we're looking for information about how we can do that best. And other than that, like I said, we're very excited to be leading this up and to be getting in from the ground up. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan Tracy from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where I am the head of scholarly communication and publishing. I'm also on the curriculum committee of the ACRL Digital Scholarship Institute, for which I was one of the previously, until recently, one of the co-chairs. And at the U of I was until this September, when I moved into my current position, I was the Information Sciences and Digital Humanities librarian. And I can't resist giving a little plug that we have a Digital Humanities librarian search open right now. So if anybody would be interested in that, I encourage you to apply. But I am the co-convener, one of the co-conveners for the DH discussion group. My term began last year, and so this is my second year as a co-convener. And this year, Nicole Eichmann-Kalwara from the University of Colorado at Boulder joined me as co-convener. And then I will roll off after ALA and a new co-convener will come on. The Digital Humanities discussion group stems from one of those original interest groups that existed prior to the digital scholarship section. So as Chelsea was alluding to earlier, it was one of the founding interest groups, so it has a longer history as both just a standalone discussion group and then an interest group. There was a very quickly grew, and there was continuing growing interest. So it made sense whenever this idea came forward for the DH discussion or interest group at that time to be a part of it. So we had our first meeting at ALA Annual in New Orleans, and we had, at that meeting, we had a presentation by Laura Brunstein from Dartmouth about digital humanities labor and how to make library labor in digital humanities visible. It was a very well-attended session. We had a lot of people there, a lot of great participation, and a lot of ideas generated that are in our minutes that are in the ALA Connect space if you have not had a chance to look at that. And some of those ideas are things we will be following up on for later programming. So that's kind of a good way. There was a lot of good stuff in terms of generating ideas, both about labor, and then we had a follow-up discussion about what the discussion group could do to further work in this area for all of you in terms of things that we could do. One thing that kind of came up a lot in that discussion was outreach to a lot of the humanities professional organizations that are out there, and it sounded like actually there is actually a separate DSS committee that's I think the outreach committee. I Chelsea or somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that is actually tasked with doing just that, but it's something that there was a lot of interest in that group. At annual, we also did a co-sponsored session with the Digital Preservation Group in ALCTS, just as a way to kind of cross-pollinate our sections and talk about ways we could collaborate, and we followed up a little bit about doing possible further programming together, which we'll explore. Otherwise, I do encourage people to get in touch if they have things that they would like to see from the H discussion group, either get in touch with Nicole or get in touch with me. Watch for an announcement for a webinar for ALA Midwinter. We will not have an in-person meeting at Midwinter, but we are in the process of trying to put together a webinar, and there should be an announcement soon. We will have an in-person meeting at ALA Annual in BC next June. With that, I will turn it over to Pam, I guess.
Hi, everyone. This is Pam Lack. I'm the Digital Humanities Librarian at San Diego State University, and I'm the co-convener of the Digital Scholarship Center's discussion group. We're actually very new to the section. We just joined in September. We were formerly an independent interest group, and I was the incoming convener of that. So with our migration to the section, I became co-convener. And I welcomed as my new co-convener, Rebecca Metzger, who's the Associate University Librarian for Research, Learning, and Engagement at UC Santa Barbara Library. The Digital Scholarship Center's discussion group, generally speaking, shares knowledge about the development of services and spaces related to digital scholarship centers, and that can include scholarly commons, research commons. Since we're sort of reconvening ourselves, we're sort of taking this moment to kind of reset and redefine ourselves a little bit. And we really welcome broad participation, whether your institution has a formal digital scholarship center or not. We are going to be meeting at Midwinter in Seattle, and we'll be following up to folks on our listserv about possible themes we'd like to explore in that first meeting of our discussion group. But some of the things that we've started thinking about is at what point in the development of services is a library ready for a center, and how would a digital scholarship center collaborate with other centers on campus? And where, broadly speaking, should digital scholarship live in a library? As well, the interest group several years ago developed a directory of digital scholarship centers, and we're thinking about looking at that and updating it if that's helpful to the discussion group and the broader section. So we encourage you to join our listserv, share your ideas, and if you're planning to be at Midwinter, let us know what you'd like to see. And as I said, we'll be following up to the listserv about some possible ideas for our first Midwinter meeting. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Jenn Huck, and I'm here to talk about the Numeric and Geospatial Data Services discussion group. I wish I had a better understanding of the history of this group. I know it's existed independently for a while as an interest group. At least I think it was independent. And so the main emphasis of this group is the provision of data services within academic libraries, especially in regards to acquisition, storage, and use of numeric and geospatial data, and then how the library staff engage with these services and deliver them. And we're also a bridge between other associations dedicated to the provision of data services and research environments such as iAssist. So we don't intend to meet in person at Midwinter. I'm hoping to do a virtual gathering instead. I'm not really sure what that might look like. So, yeah, and I'm definitely coming from the mode of let's figure out what this is and explore how we can best serve the members of this group. So if you are listening to this and think you have some ideas about what you would like to see, either in terms of format, so like, would you like a formal webinar with a featured speaker, or virtual roundtable, or some sort of like virtual unconference? let me know. I would love to hear your feedback, and then what topics might be interesting to you. So yeah, like I said, we're definitely in the mode of figuring this out, trying to figure out what people might be interested in, and please do reach out. Yeah, again, I'm Jenn Huck. I'm the data librarian. I probably should have introduced myself at the beginning. I'm the data librarian at the University of Virginia Library. I am part of a research data services team here, and I mostly focus on data access and discovery. So that's where I'm coming from personally, but of course we have a whole suite of data services here at UVA. Okay, so that's actually all I have to say. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to the next speaker.
Hi, this is Anna Sackman, and I'm the Science Data and Engineering Librarian at UC Berkeley. And I'm the co-convener for the Research Data Management Discussion Group. And one of the things that I really liked about this group is that I've been able to kind of reconnect and hear from other librarians who I went to graduate school with, like Jenn Huck and a couple of other people at UW-Madison. So that's been fun seeing these names pop up again. We started really back in February of 2018, figuring out what was going to shape and define this group, because I think there was a possibility that it could be so much or so similar to a lot of the other discussion groups. And we have about a little over 100 subscribers. And we've developed a space where librarians can share ideas on how they communicate and educate users, including researchers, students, and faculty on research data management. And this will include outreach efforts and instruction, like drop-in workshops, or if you're doing any course integrated work or lab integrated work. And then how we can communicate these concepts and processes to users through consultations and the reference process and minimize confusion. What's been very interesting to me in the work that we've done over the last couple of months is learning about all of the research data management programs that are going on across the country and how differently they're shaped and the different focus of each group. And it really goes to show that there's still a lot of work to be done and we're still figuring out a lot, but I think that that we as librarians are doing some pretty incredible work in this space. So there has been really minimal organic conversation within the discussion group. And I have, initially I kind of pushed in the beginning and realized that maybe just isn't for this group. So instead we moved to more of a model of having virtual meetings, and we held 2 in May. And each meeting had a kind of a different theme. And in May, we talked about how to best partner with subject liaisons, and if there's any resistance in your library to supporting research data management. And then we had another 2 virtual meetings in July. And each of these 4 meetings are about between 5 and 10 attendees. So it was a really nice space to learn from each other and ask each other questions. This group did meet at ALA. I was unable to be there. I was at an engineering librarianship conference, but Andrew Johnson from CU Boulder was able to be there in my absence. And we had 2 presentations. One was on the evolution of data initiatives, and the other one was research data management and how it has combined with this big data to knowledge grant that is coming out of the NIH that we see at a couple of these big research institutions. So my hope was to have a few more virtual discussions this fall, but the fall semester has really gotten away from me. And so keep an eye out. We'll be doing hopefully 1 more in November and 1 more in December. And there will not be a meeting at ALA midwinter, and I'm a little bit unsure about ALA annual. I'll be going on maternity leave starting in January of 2019. So you can look forward to Jamie Wittenberg, who is at IU, and she'll be stepping in as the co-convener for this spring. So like the other conveners, please let me know if you have any ideas or if you'd like to see something specific come out of this group.
So this is Chelsea Rowell once again, and so you've heard from representatives of many of our discussion groups, but we also wanted to give a shout out to other discussion groups, including whose conveners weren't able to join us today. And those other discussion groups include the Data Information Literacy Discussion Group, the Open Research Discussion Group, and the Visualization Discussion Group. I will add, and perhaps I should have included this in my introduction, that I think one of the biggest advantages of forming the section was our ability to create many of these discussion groups. So little communities of practice for different aspects of the very nebulous term digital scholarship. And those conversations within these discussion groups can, of course, take place in person. There are slots for each of these discussion groups currently at both midwinter and annual, though the future of midwinter is perhaps transitioning away from the large conference model. A question came up via chat asking to define the open research discussion group. So I am going to navigate to their charge. The charge of the open research discussion group is to provide a collaborative forum for discussing support for open research and reproducibility within academic and research libraries. Some of the focuses of these various discussion groups can intersect or overlap with one another. And you heard from the convener of Research Data Management discussion group talking about that challenge. But I think that I guess the distinctness of some of these discussion groups is up to the conveners, both now and in the future. So in addition to these discussion groups, one of the tasks that the executive committee first took on as we were forming the section was also defining the committees. So as of right now, our committee structure includes conference program planning. So that is for each annual conference, a different program planning committee is formed. We also have the Data Queue editorial board. For those of you who aren't familiar, Data Queue, also known as Research Data Queue, is the question and answer site for questions about research data management. And so we defined it as an editorial board under the auspices of the section. The rest of the committees are committees proper, as opposed to editorial boards, and those include equity, diversity, and inclusion, the liaison committee, which came up earlier. Dan mentioned from the meeting of the Digital Humanities discussion group this past annual conference that there was a lot of interest in formalizing relationships between the section and other professional communities and organizations in various disciplines. And so one mechanism for us to do that is the liaison committee. So they are responsible for identifying and appointing liaisons to other organizations like ADHO, perhaps, which is the Alliance of Digital Humanities Organizations, or more narrowly ACH, the Association for Computing in the Humanities. That's just to illustrate the kinds of liaison relationships that we had in mind. The membership committee, which is, responsible for building the community of the section, they hosted a social at ALA Annual in New Orleans, and they are hosting another coming up at Midwinter in Seattle. The nominating committee, which is responsible for putting together the slate of candidates for the executive committee of the section. The outreach committee, which has done fantastic work already conducting the member survey, as well as facilitating the creation of a logo. And finally, the professional development committee, whose work this virtual program is thanks to. So I hope that provides an overview of the section, our structure, and what each of our units has accomplished thus far. And at this point, we'll open it up to questions from all of you. And this URL that is visible on this slide will take you to the Directory of Leadership, not only for the section's executive committee, but for each of our committees, the Data Queue editorial board, and each of the discussion groups. There you can read the charges of these various committees and discussion groups. And pro tip, if you log in to the ALA site and view any of these directories of leadership, you can get the contact information for those individuals. Thank you, Jennifer, for pasting that into the chat. So, open Q&A. Feel free to type any questions that you have into the chat, and we will do our very best to answer them. So one question that came through the chat is, will there be a central list developed for all programs or webinars being sponsored by any or all of the discussion groups? I think so. One thing is that we have distinct email lists for each committee and for each discussion group. And anyone can join the email lists for the discussion groups. But we also have the digital scholarship section wide email list, DSSL. So, perhaps a practice that we can encourage across all discussion group conveners is to cross-post various opportunities, both to their individual discussion groups list as well as to DSSL. Another communication platform, in addition to all of these email lists, is ALA Connect. And there are spaces within Connect for the entire section, as well as for each of the committees and the discussion groups. I myself am still wrapping my head around the new ALA Connect and still need to understand how much is openly viewable to everyone versus how much is only viewable to people who are officially members of those units, but it can never hurt to duplicate. So for example, Karen Hogenboom, when she was promoting this virtual program, she sent it both to DSSL, the email list, and to the digital scholarship section space on the ALA Connect. Another question came in. Do you know of any resources with guidelines for discussing weight or value or merit of digital projects versus peer-reviewed articles for non-library faculty? For example, English professors. So I should add that any participants, any panelists or attendees should feel free to weigh in answering these questions via chat. A couple of resources come to mind. Certainly MLA has guidelines, the American Historical Association has guidelines. I think there's also one that is specific to public history. I think some universities, I know at one of my previous institutions, we took kind of a deep dive into assessment, and a former chair of the English department at Emory was really generous in talking with us about how his department evaluated digital scholarship projects for tenure and promotion. Another resource that comes to mind, and I will try to paste some of these links in afterwards. I mean, it's a few years back, but there was a special issue, I'm forgetting which journal, but there was a special issue about evaluating digital scholarship, and I find that to be really resonant. I think Todd Presner from UCLA may have been one of the people who contributed a really, really thoughtful, not checklist, because you need a holistic evaluation, but that was another great resource that I returned to. Nicole Eichmann Kalwara pointed out via chat that another resource is CASRA's credit schema, which helps document everyone's contributions in a DH project. So perhaps not only the disciplinary researcher, but library collaborators, technologists, collaborators, student contributors. So thank you, Nicole and David and Dan, for weighing in. Another question that came in via chat is whether there will be a section-wide meeting to discuss DSS business at ALA. The answer is yes. I need to refresh my memory as to what shape that will take. I think what we requested, and it may have been Alois who assisted us with forming the schedule, but I think what we requested was what we're calling a digital scholarship section information exchange. I think very similar in format actually to this virtual meeting, where it's like, what is everyone up to and what do we want to do in the future? So when the midwinter scheduler becomes available, look for something called something like the DSS information exchange. Also, shout out to RBMS, from whom we adopted that model. Rebecca, who asked the question about section-wide DSS business meetings, I guess another example of business meetings, so we'll have an all-committee meeting, which will all be in one room, all the different committee meetings taking place simultaneously, you know, probably each at a round table. But also because it's all of those people in the room, it lends itself to popping over from table to table, especially those of us in the executive committee. But that's more of a truly a business meeting for those committees as opposed to the info exchange, which is an all may come learning and sharing option. Yeah, as Karen commented in the chat, the info exchange is a great chance for groups within the section to find common interests and opportunities to work together. That's definitely true. We want it to be an opportunity to cross-pollinate and to get each of us out of our tiny communities, such as, you know, the open research.
Hi, everyone. This is Karen Hogenboom, the chair of the Digital Scholarship Section Professional Development Committee. Sorry about my voice. I wasn't planning to talk, but it looks like Chelsea's having technical difficulties. Do we have any other questions? Anything that we can answer in this format before you take home all our contact information and contact us later? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to wrap up a little bit early. Like I said, it's a lot of information, a lot to digest. Please take a look at the website, contact us, come to the meeting at Midwinter. Oh, and Chelsea just came back, so I will let her say goodbye to you as well.
Hi everyone, this is Chelsea. My computer dropped the connection and I'm back again in case there are any questions that I can answer that went unanswered in my absence. Since I rejoined, I can't see the chat history. So if you have a question, please just retype it.
There is a question about the email sign-up list. This is Michelle. So I just pasted that, but I'll repaste it again so that Chelsea can see it. I think this is right, the SIMPA page. Is that correct?
Yep, it is. That is the central place for all ALA email lists, and you can search for particular lists. So an example would be the Digital Collections Discussion Group, DSSL. Yep, so that's the great place for signing up for that. I think the question I was in the midst of answering when my connection was lost was a standing time for the DSS info exchange. This will be the first time we've offered it. So we don't have a regularly occurring time slot. Like if you're involved in other ALA groups, you might say like the ELEX Publications Committee has always met at this particular time while we are meeting for the first time. But ACRL staff sent that the midwinter meeting room assignments this morning. So once I read that email, I will find out that time. And also, you know, if you're attending midwinter in person, the conference scheduler will soon become available, and that is how you would be able to find the time and location of the info exchange. So it seems like things are winding down, but I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope your questions were answered, and if not, you can always feel free to look any of us up through the directory of leadership, reach out to us individually, certainly reach out to me. I can kind of speak on behalf of the executive committee. And we're really looking forward to working with you, both in person and virtually.